I used to shop at Target all the time, but recently I don't want to go back there, at least not to the location that I live by. Some creepy and weird things happened to me there. There's really only one Target that's close to where I live. It's been my main store for years to get just about anything. There's some other stores that I go to as well, but Target has the best variety. I've always preferred it over Walmart as well. One night, I went shopping after work. I was getting a lot of items, mainly groceries. I got a cart and began shopping around the store. It wasn't all that busy, and that made things go smoothly. After shopping for probably about 30 minutes, I was almost done. My cart had lots of items in it, and I was in the last area of the store that I would be going to, which was the cold section. The refrigerated items and the freezer items is what I would always get last. That way, they wouldn't melt by the time I got home. When I got to that section of the store, it was empty. I was the only person there. They had a freezer at the back of the store, and I was getting something from it when I saw something strange. It was like movement of some sort behind the items. This particular freezer section was up against the very back of the store leading to the back room. That's when I realized that a person was back there, behind the freezer shelves. I could see between the levels of shelves that they had, but not by much. Somebody was right behind the spot that I was at. At first, I thought it was kind of funny, but I soon realized it wasn't a Target employee. I moved down to get something else, and whoever was there seemed to move down with me. As I was examining a product, I could see that the person was wearing black, not the typical red shirt and khakis that a Target employee would wear. Then, they got closer, and I noticed that I could now see their head through the gap between the shelves. The person was wearing a black ski mask. My only thought was that this was really strange. I moved even further down, and the masked man moved down with me. He was beginning to really freak me out. He kept staring at me from the other side. Luckily for me, I only needed one more item from that aisle. I went to grab it, as the masked man stared at me. Then, as I was reaching for the product, the guy reached over and shoved the whole box of them at me. Multiple items fell onto the floor. I put them back as he disappeared into the freezer. This guy was causing problems, and I decided to tell an employee about him. I walked down a few aisles before finding somebody who worked there. I told them about the guy and how he was inside of the freezer. The employee told me that she would tell the person to leave and that they couldn't be back there. There happened to be doors leading to the back room of the store right nearby, and I watched her walk through them. About a minute later, the employee emerged again. She told me that she couldn't find anybody back there at all. Whoever had been doing that must have left. I hadn't seen anybody else come out of the doors, though. I shrugged it off and was done with my shopping, so I decided to head out. I walked up to the front and paid for everything, then left the store. About a week later, I returned. I would say that I went grocery shopping roughly once a week. I didn't have a specific day or anything like that I would go, but on average it was probably about once. This time that I went back to the Target was just like any other. I did all of my shopping in about 30 minutes or so, and then checked out with all of my items. After I left the store, I walked out to my car and unloaded the groceries into it. Then I started driving home. This particular Target has several other businesses around it, like just past the parking lot. There was also a few trees and bushes around for scenery. As I was driving away, leaving the parking lot, I was driving between some other businesses and the Target parking lot going to a connecting road. That's when I saw the same guy dressed in all black and a ski mask. He was halfway hiding behind a bush, and he popped out and looked directly at me as I drove away. I drove right past him in disbelief. This was the same guy who I had seen last time I had been at this same Target. But this time he was outside, not inside the store. It was crazy to me how I specifically saw him. Maybe he just liked to go to Target and mess with people. I really didn't know. But what I did know is that I was really weirded out by this. The way he was hiding in the bushes was concerning. Luckily, I was away from him now and on the way home. After that experience, I didn't go to Target for almost 2 weeks. When I returned, it was just another routine shopping trip, just like any other. I did my shopping like always and then left the store. It was nighttime again, and things were pretty quiet inside and outside of the Target. I had parked sort of in the middle of the parking lot, about halfway back. There were a few other cars around mine. When I got back to my car, I unloaded the groceries again and got inside. I started my engine and was just about ready to drive away. I happened to glance over at the car that was parked directly next to me to the left for no particular reason. When I glanced over, though, I noticed movement. It caught my attention, and my eyes stayed focused on it. The entire car had looked empty to me. The car was a standard-looking white sedan, and the back windows were tinted dark, but the front windows I could see through. That's when somebody emerged from the back seat, crawling over into the front passenger seat. It was a guy wearing all black and a ski mask. My jaw dropped when I saw this. He looked right at me through the windows separating us. He continued to stare at me for probably 5 seconds or so as I sat there in total shock. Then, his door started to open. I was so surprised, still from just seeing the guy, that I didn't do anything. It was like I couldn't move. After he opened the door, he stood up and reached for my driver's door. I finally came to my senses and hit the lock switch. Just moments later, the man with the mask tried opening my driver's door, which had just locked. He then leaned in very closely to my driver's window, basically pressing his face against it. I was beyond creeped out. He stared right at me, as close as he possibly could. I yelled at him to go away, but he didn't move. I put my car into reverse and then started backing out. The guy grabbed onto my car as I backed away. He was trying to stay with me, and when I had backed out and began driving, he finally let go. I saw him then run back to the car that he had been inside. I hit the gas harder to leave as soon as possible. Then I was able to make it out of the parking lot, and I quickly turned off to a busier street. After that, I quickly turned into another parking lot and then turned my lights off and parked. I watched, and several seconds later, I saw a car come out of the Target parking lot and drive quickly down the street past me. I was pretty sure that that was the guy. After the car was long gone, I was able to drive home, and I made it back okay. This wasn't all that long ago. Each of the last 3 times I went to that Target, I've seen the same man. Why is he there, and what is he doing? I really don't know. I haven't been back to that Target since. For some background of this story, I'm a female, and I worked at Target for a while, over a year ago. The Target that I worked at was very close to my apartment at the time, and it was a pretty enjoyable job for me. My favorite part was talking with coworkers and becoming friends with them. Mostly what I would do is work in the clothing department. I would do all sorts of things there, and it wasn't very stressful because things usually don't get busy like they do in the grocery section. At the time of this story, I had been working there for almost 4 months. I remember it very well. It all started on a typical day at work. I was in the clothing department, particularly the women's section, straightening up items that were out of place. It was during the daytime, and the store was calm. This is when a tall man approached me. Assuming he was a customer who had a question about something, I greeted him, asking how I could help. The man stood there, looking directly at me with a somewhat creepy grin on his face for a moment. He then said, "Yes, you can help me, by going out with me tonight." I laughed it off. I had no interest in going out with the man, but I wasn't scared of him or anything. I just told him that I had a boyfriend, even though I didn't actually have one. This was always the best way to tell off a guy that I wasn't interested in my experience. The man replied rather quickly, saying, "No, you don't." I told him that I did, and I asked the man if he needed help finding anything. He then responded with an even creepier reply. "Yes, directions to your house." I laughed off this remark as well. I was just hoping that the man was joking around, because this was getting really weird. After he said that, I told him that I had a lot of work to do, and I told him to have a good day. Then I started making my way to another section of the large clothing department that we had. The clothing area was practically big enough to get lost in. I was hoping to lose sight of the man, but when I started moving away, he followed. When I had made it to another section and he was still next to me, I stopped. I didn't have a problem with confrontation, and I said to the man, "Why are you following me? You're kind of creeping me out." The guy put his hands up as if to say, "My bad." He then walked away, and it was a huge relief. I had dealt with customers asking me out or trying to flirt with me a couple of times. It didn't happen very often, but here and there it did. None of them had been nearly as bad as this, though. I kept working for several hours. By then, I had forgotten about my experience earlier, but I soon remembered when I spotted the same man. I couldn't believe it at first. This was now about 3 hours after our first interaction. To me, it was still mind-blowing that he was still in the store. Maybe he had left and then come back. Either way, it was strange, and it was now a bigger concern for me, because shortly after I had spotted him, I saw him look over at me and then look quickly away. The man was sort of far away too. It looked like he was almost hiding from me. He stood, mostly covered by a rack of clothing, staring in my direction. I moved slightly and kept working, to which the man moved slightly as well to keep looking at me. I stopped and sighed. This was really annoying now. I walked away, leaving what I was doing. I moved to a whole nother section of the store, far away from that one. There, I didn't really have any work to do, but I just wanted to get that man off of me. I was now in the grocery area, and I was there for about a minute before spotting the man again. He was walking into the area, and he saw me for a split second, and then disappeared into a nearby aisle. At this point, I decided to take my break. I had one that I could take at any time, and I was planning to after I had finished the work that I was doing in the clothing department. But seeing as this creep was back and still following me around, I decided to just take my break now. I radioed in on my walkie-talkie to let my supervisor know I would be taking my break. Then I headed towards the front end of the store. Our break room was through doors at the front, and I walked in there. When I got inside the break room, I thought back to the crazy situation. Did that man seriously think he was being slick? I mean, I spotted him twice, and it was like he thought I couldn't see him. I just hoped that he would notice I was not there anymore and then leave. I'm not going to lie, I took a little bit extra time on my break. I was pretty concerned to return back out and see the man again. If I did see him, I was going to have to tell a coworker or our security team. I didn't want to have to do that, but I would if it was necessary. When I went back out though, I didn't notice the man anywhere. I went back to work in the clothing department, but was much more alert and constantly looking around. I didn't see the guy for the rest of my shift that night, which was about 2 more hours. I was really happy about this. But still, I thought possibly he was still there looking at me somewhere and had just gotten better about hiding. At the end of the day though, I don't think he was. I left work and went home, not seeing the guy at all. Soon, I forgot all about him. I worked several more times that week, mostly my usual shifts. One night, the very next week, I found myself working on a quiet evening. I was almost done, and it was past the busy amount of customers that we would usually get between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. I was doing my usual work of organizing a section of the clothing department. That's when I got a call on my walkie. Somebody radioed asking for me, and I radioed back telling them to go ahead. I wasn't quite sure who had said it, but that wasn't uncommon. A big store like Target has so many employees. Plus, there are always new people. A handful of my coworkers, I could instantly recognize their voices over the walkie-talkie, but many of them I could not. After telling them to go ahead, they asked me to go to Channel 3. This is how we would communicate without other employees hearing us. It was used for more descriptive details or directions on what we were supposed to do. After turning to 3, I told them to go ahead again. That's when I was told that I was needed in receiving and to help with something quick. I told them that I was on my way and began walking over. Receiving was the back room of the store basically. I wouldn't work back there a lot, but I had helped with things there several times in the past. It took me a few minutes to walk all the way back there, and when I had made it, I exited the store into the back. Things were very quiet back there. I had expected to see someone there waiting for me. I turned my walkie to Channel 3 again and said that I was in receiving. Nobody said anything, but I heard my voice echo onto somebody else's walkie nearby. I then called out, asking where they were, but I didn't get a response. I walked closer to the voice, which was near one of the doors leading to outside. I noticed that it was open, and I could see outside into the night. That's when I saw the man again. He stepped out from behind a shelf back there. I couldn't believe he was here. "That was you on the walkie, wasn't it?" I said to him. The man just started walking towards me. I backed away as he got closer. I looked at how much taller he was than me. If he tried to grab me, it would be difficult to get away. He got closer, and I turned around, but as soon as I did, he grabbed my arm. Then, he started to pull me backwards. I started yelling, but back there, it wasn't likely anybody would hear me. Suddenly, I heard the doors leading back to the shopping area open. I then saw one of my coworkers, Amy, walking over. I yelled to her, and she asked what was going on. The man let me go, and then sprinted out the doors, outside. I ran over to Amy, and explained to her what had happened. Amy told me that she had heard the person asking me to go to Channel 3. She said that when she didn't recognize the voice, and was just being nosy in general, she turned to Channel 3 as well. She was wondering what I was being asked to do. When she heard I was supposed to go to receiving, she found it strange, because she had just been there earlier in the night, and wasn't aware of anything that would be done back there. She decided to see for herself, and I'm really glad that she did. We had to call the police and report the incident, but unfortunately, not much could be done. The man had bought a walkie-talkie and got on the same frequency as us, which was not hard to do at all. Many standard walkie-talkies were capable of it. I'm just glad I was all right. I worked at Target for a few months after that, and luckily, never saw the man again. I'm a former Target employee. I worked there 5 years ago, pushing carts in the parking lot. This was one of my favorite jobs that I've had so far, to be honest. It was pretty enjoyable and easy work. However, I do have one really scary story to tell. This is something that still creeps me out when I think about it. I worked at a super Target and it was in a busy area. The store and the parking lot were very big, and they were close to other stores and restaurants that were close by. This made work challenging occasionally because of how busy it would get. One time, I was working a night shift, and it had been really busy in the day earlier, but by now, things were very calm. It felt like the calm after the storm, because the carts were scattered throughout the parking lot, not just in the corrals. This was typical on busy days. When I had the time later, I would go all around the parking lot and retrieve the carts that were not in the corrals. I would also bring all the ones that were in the corrals back to the store as well. Obviously, with how busy it had been earlier, I hadn't been able to keep up with the parking lot as perfectly as I would like. So, it was probably about 9 p.m. or so. I went to the northeast corner of the parking lot. There was a cart that was against the curb at the corner the farthest away from the store. I walked over and got the cart. As soon as I was grabbing it, I noticed an SUV pulling into this area of the parking lot. There was an entrance/exit right there as well. The SUV did not keep driving though. Instead, it stopped right in front of me. I found this kind of strange, but I just got the cart and started walking back to the store. But that's when I heard a voice call out, "Hey!" I looked back and saw a man getting out of the SUV. The vehicle was not parked in a parking space, but just parked there, partly covering 2 different spaces and the driving area. The guy said to me that maybe I could help him with something. I stopped with the cart and looked back to him. I asked him what he needed help with. The man waved me over and I started walking to him. He said that he didn't know if I knew much about cars or not, but he didn't, and something weird was happening with his. The man was short, but looked sort of strong. I did know a little bit about cars, but not a whole lot. I was hoping that I would be able to help the man with this problem though. Then, the man asked me to get inside the backseat of his car and listen to the weird noise it made when he drove. The question really seemed to come out of left field. It took me by surprise, and it also seemed really sketchy. I changed my mind suddenly. "Actually, I really don't know anything about cars," I said. Then, I turned around to get my cart and started walking back over to it. The man told me to wait, but I didn't. I kept walking, making my way back to the Target. I heard footsteps of the man coming after me though. This was really strange. I sped up. The guy behind me seemed to speed up as well. At that point, I decided to just start sprinting. I felt like I was in danger, and I knew if I made it in the Target, I would be safe. I ran all the way there, sprinting with the cart, and the man could not keep up and stopped chasing me. When I got back inside, I decided to work on the other end of the parking lot for a while, and that's exactly what I did. And I also tried to stay close to the building as I collected carts from the other end. Everything went fine. I looked out to the other side of the parking lot where the man and his car had been, and I didn't see him or the SUV. He must have left, which was good. After working for a while, it was time for my final break of the day. It was a 15-minute break. I walked back inside and into the break room. There, I sat on my phone, scrolling through social media and Snapchatting with friends. At that time, I was the only person in the break room. With it being late, there was an overlap of people at the end of their evening shifts or at the beginning of their overnight shifts. Nobody else was taking their break. This was fine with me. About halfway through, I heard the door to the break room open and close. There was a little hallway with a closet that led into the break room. I expected somebody to enter the room, but no one did. I didn't think anything of it. I continued sitting in my chair and looking at my phone, but several moments later, I had a strange feeling. It was like the feeling that I was being watched. I usually don't get this feeling, so when I did, I turned around. That's when I saw the guy who had chased after me earlier. He was standing in the entrance of the break room, looking right at me. Then, he started walking closer to me. I got up and once again sprinted away from the man. I ran out the other exit of the break room, which led to an employees-only area where you punched in and there was a desk there as well. Nobody was back there at the time. There was also a door leading to outside, and I ran out of it and back into the parking lot. I ran around to the other entrance door and quickly found one of the managers. I told them the whole story, but when they went into the break room, the man was gone. He must have exited after I had. Luckily, I didn't have much time left on the clock. I worked very carefully for the next 30 minutes or so. Then I punched out and went home. I never saw the man again. After this incident, I worked at Target for quite a while. Nothing like that ever happened again, which I'm glad to say. When I was younger, I used to work at Target. One time, I was working the day before Christmas. Being one of the store managers, it was my job to close up for the night. Now, I've never had any other weird encounters besides the one I'm about to tell you. Keep in mind, this was a super Target, so just to get to one side took minutes. On this night, I was alone because the other employees had already left early to celebrate Christmas Eve with their families. As I walked through the empty aisles, fixing stuff and organizing displays, I started hearing these weird noises. At first, there was this faint rustling sound, like someone was moving things across the store on the other side. I stopped and tried to figure out where it was coming from, but the noise disappeared as quickly as it came. I thought maybe I was just imagining things because it was late and I was just extremely tired from my lack of sleep. But now I started to really overthink, and it felt like someone was watching me. I figured it was just my mind playing tricks, because the store being empty made everything feel a lot more creepy. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the intercom started to crackle, and it totally freaked me out. My heart sank, because it was at full volume. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but I thought I heard a voice. In a fast urge, I ran over to the nearest phone, and there it was, hanging off, so I hung it up. I assumed maybe it just fell and hit a button on the way down, but deep down inside, I was probably just lying to myself to not be as scared as I was. There was nothing that could convince me that this wasn't someone inside the store doing a prank, or one of those "we stayed at Target for 24 hours" videos for some clout on YouTube, as we have had in the rare occasion in the past. As I made my way through the toy section, something super weird caught my eye. The toys that were all neatly arranged before were now scattered on the floor, like some kid had been playing with them. I was confused, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it's just the potential pranksters that are in the store as we speak. I was sick and tired of all the jokes happening, and I just wanted to go home. This was making my night longer. So I started searching every corner for any sign of anyone that could be in the store with me. I called out, half expecting a group of friends to jump out and laugh at their successful prank, but the store stayed quiet. I started feeling frustrated because I couldn't make sense of all this crazy stuff. I thought about calling security or the police, but without any solid proof, it seemed pointless. This is the strangest part of the story. As I'm walking through the cereal aisle, I hear a loud buzzing, and I see a flash going off behind a box of Fruity Pebbles. And it's a phone, and someone was calling it. I went to pick up the phone, but it dialed as the battery was on 1%. I got a glimpse of the background, but it was the standard Apple background, and it was a pretty old iPhone. At this point, I knew somebody had left this here on purpose to play with me, and this was an elaborate prank that was really thought out. I had searched every aisle in the store, so I thought to myself, maybe they snuck off into the back rooms as they were planning their next prank. So I went to check it out, and once again searching high and low in every spot, but still saw nothing. I sat down out of exhaustion, trying to catch my breath and my mind, and I started to think that maybe there wasn't anybody in the store with me at all. And then, in this really creepy moment, all of the lights in the store suddenly went out, and I couldn't see anything. I grabbed my phone as a flashlight, and without a second thought, ran for the main exit out of the back rooms. I made it out of the front door, and I didn't look back once, but I could have sworn there were footsteps running after me. At this point, there was no need to be skeptical. I had enough proof to call the cops and have them check out the store. I told them everything that went down, and they wasted no time showing up. They searched the place top to bottom, and they found these 4 teenagers hiding in the back, laughing their heads off. Turns out, they were pulling some messed up YouTube prank, trying to scare people after hours for their YouTube series. They were all underage, so I'm not sure what charges they got for their punishment. As a 22-year-old Target employee, I led a pretty normal life. but the experience I'm about to tell you caused me to quit my longtime job there. It all began with a mysterious person who seemed to be following me every day at work. At first, it was nothing out of the ordinary. We get a lot of shoppers, as people make a habit to get groceries for themselves every single week, so I did see a lot of the same people. But this man looked to be somewhere in his mid-30s, and I had never seen him before. He had a healthy build, but only wore a half-zip button-up and normal blue jeans, and he started to appear more frequently. At first, he would come in and purchase food and leave, so I was never concerned about him. But then, as days went by, I had noticed that he would show up during all of my shifts and simply wander around the store without buying anything. I also couldn't shake off the feeling that he was watching me, because every time I would glance over to him, we would make brief eye contact, and then he would instantly look away. On Sunday, during the same week, he kept showing up. The man showed up not once, but 3 times during my shift. He loitered around the aisles, sitting on corners and stealing glances in my direction. This was a huge red flag to me, and at this point, the man is definitely stalking me, so I decided to keep an eye on him at all times, no matter where I was, and was even planning to tell my store manager the next day if he showed up one more time. One evening, I decided to tell one of my coworkers about the creep. I walked up to my coworker Sarah, and I told her everything about how I was worried for my safety. Sarah asked, "Have you talked to anyone else about this? Maybe a manager or security?" "Not yet," I replied, feeling a bit dramatic about the situation. "I wanted to see if he would show up again today. If he does, I'm definitely going to talk to our store manager tomorrow." As I stood at the checkout counter, Sarah approached me with a concerned look on her face. "He's back again, isn't he?" I nodded. "Yeah, I've been watching him. It's starting to freak me out." Sarah squeezed my arm reassuringly. "Listen, after work today, I'll walk you to your car. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're safe." Relieved to hear this from her, I responded, "Thanks, Sarah, I really appreciate it. I just want to feel safe again." Almost immediately after me and Sarah had our conversation, the man approached me while I was working at the checkout counter. He approached with a smile. He invaded my personal space as he said, "Hey there, how's your day going? Enjoying your time working here?" I felt a knot forming in my stomach as I tried to maintain my composure. "I'm just doing my job. Can I help you with something specific?" He had a huge smile on his face and seemed to be extremely pleased that he was finally talking to me. It gave me the creeps. "You're such a dedicated worker. I'm curious, when do you usually get off from your shifts? I might have some free time, and it would be nice to meet up." My heart raced, but I stayed calm. I took a step back, creating some distance. "I'm sorry, but I can't give out personal information like that. It's against store policy. Can I assist you in anything else?" He continued to press me with more questions. "No need to be so guarded. I just want to get to know you better. Tell me, do you live around here? It would be convenient for us to spend more time together." My anxiety slowly turned into anger as I just wanted this creep to leave. I said one last time in a more demanding tone, "I'm not comfortable sharing personal details with strangers. Please respect my boundaries and stop asking invasive questions." Ignoring what I just said, he leaned over and whispered to me, "You're making it difficult for us to connect. But don't worry, I'll find out where you live eventually." He then got up, smiled, and walked away out of the front exit as if nothing had happened. Later that day, as we made our way through the empty parking lot, me and Sarah were looking around to see if the man was anywhere near, but there was no sign of anyone. Only about 7 cars were in the entire parking lot. Sarah noticed my unease and said, "Stay close to me, we're almost there." As we made our way through the empty parking lot, I started to feel like he was still there, so I hurried to my car. Just as I finally got to my car, I put the keys in the door and unlocked it, when all of a sudden I heard scuffles from behind me, and the man was grabbing me from behind. He had Sarah in one hand by the arm, his hand clamping tightly over my mouth. I fought back as best as I could because he was 10 times stronger than me. In that moment, adrenaline fueled my instincts. I remembered the pepper spray I kept in my purse for emergencies. I managed to reach for it just in time, spraying a huge stream of liquid right into his eyes, and he released me and Sarah. For some reason, in a moment like this, my first thought after was to kick him in his vulnerable area. I was a soccer player in college, so you can already imagine the pain that I caused this stalker, and he fell to the ground in agony. We wasted no time, and we both sprinted to my car, heart pounding in my chest, and sped away from that target. I was shaking from all of the adrenaline, and Sarah and I dialed 911 to report the incident, praying that help would arrive before the man left. The police launched an investigation, and soon enough, they caught the man, When the video footage from the store's security cameras revealed his identity, the police were able to track him down. It turned out he had a history of stalking and harassment and was taken to jail, as well as a restraining order and being banned from every single Target.
I worked at Target up until as recently as 6 months ago. It was a job that I had for a total of 1 year and 5 months, working in multiple departments. I started out as a cashier, but then moved to mostly the customer service area. This is something that happened towards the end of my career there. I remember it like it was yesterday, as it was still pretty recent. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was working in the customer service desk. This store was a super Target, and we had 2 entrances. The service desk was near the entrance doors, and it was at the front facing the rest of the store. Things were somewhat busy, but manageable during the first few hours. Generally, working at the service desk was pretty easy for me, and I liked it a lot better than being a cashier. At one point, a few hours into my shift, a man came in the store, and I noticed him walking directly over to me. He had a big Target bag in his hands, and I was expecting him to be making a return. The man was average height, looked to have blonde hair, but wore a hat, and wore shorts and a t-shirt. Things started out normal. He told me that he wanted to make a return, and then pulled a laptop out of his Target bag. He didn't have the box for the laptop or anything, but he did have a receipt. It was one of the laptops that we sold, and it went for about $400. The man told me that the laptop did not work as soon as he opened it, and that it must be defective or something. He said that he wanted a full refund and was upset that it didn't work, and he would buy another laptop elsewhere. He opened up the laptop and tried turning it on, showing me that it didn't work. I told the man that he could return it, but I would need to see a proof of purchase. He then took the receipt that he had and showed it to me. I asked to see it, and the man handed it over. Immediately, I could tell that the receipt was fake. Working in customer service, I saw countless receipts and dealt with many returns. Sometimes, people would try and return stuff with no proof of purchase at all. Other times, they would try to return things that we didn't even sell. It was crazy the things that some people would do, but it didn't happen very often at all. I asked the man if he had any other proof of purchase, and he started to become angry. He told me that he had a receipt and said that that should be enough. He then started to complain about the laptop being broken again. I told the man that I was having a little bit of trouble with the receipt because I could tell that it was not a real one. I pointed out some of the differences to him. Some points of information on the receipt were in the wrong areas. The man insisted that it was real though. I took my walkie and called for my boss. They would have a better understanding of how to handle this situation than I would. When I did that though, the man grabbed the laptop and quickly walked away and out of the store. When my boss got to where I was, I told him about the incident. However, the man was gone by then. We talked about it for a while, but after that, I just continued with my shift. I took a break soon and then returned back to work. By the time it was the early evening, several hours had gone by. We were always pretty busy then, and things would eventually get quieter. It was when things started to quiet down and it was getting dark outside that I saw the same man come inside the store again. He walked in the doors that were near me and made his way into the store without looking at me. But then he walked closer. A couple of minutes later, I noticed him staring at me. He was sort of behind a display that we had, and there were quite a few things that would obstruct my vision from the rest of the store. I hadn't seen him for several minutes, but I found this kind of creepy that he was looking at me. I had to ignore it though. I didn't know what the man was doing here, and if he was going to just buy something, or if he had any bad intentions of some sort. Clearly, he had just tried to scam us earlier. I went on with my work. Things only got quieter for the rest of the night until I was off at 9 p.m. At that point, I walked back to the middle of the store where the break room and employee area was. I clocked out and then left through the employee-only exit door in the middle that led out into the parking lot. I started walking to my car that was at the back center of the lot. Now, I hadn't seen the man for several hours, ever since I had spotted him staring at me about 2 hours earlier. But when I had made it within maybe 30 feet of my car, I saw the man again. He came up from behind a couple of parked cars that were across from mine and behind me closer to the store. I had heard somebody suddenly walking out into the parking lot where I was. I looked behind, and there was the man. I didn't say anything, and neither did he. He just started approaching me and walking closer. I turned and ran for my car, and was barely able to make it inside before the guy got there. He actually tried opening my driver's door. Luckily, I had locked it just in time. I didn't bother staying there to see what the man would do next. I immediately backed out and left the Target. As soon as I was on the road, I called one of my friends, who was working at the Target still at the time, to let her know what had happened. I heard back from her later that the parking lot was investigated, but the man was gone. In the rest of my time working there, I never did see him again. I wonder, though, what his intentions were. He was likely upset that I had foiled his plan, but I was just doing my job. I went to Target on a quiet night just last week. I didn't need much and was just there to look at some skincare products and get some that I needed. When I got inside the store, there wasn't many other people in there at all. This Target had just one set of doors that were the far left side. Once I went in, I walked all the way to the far right side of the store where they had the products that I wanted to look at. I made it there and began to look at them. Nobody else was in the aisle when I got there. I would say probably 5 minutes or so after being there, I felt someone enter the aisle that I was in. I didn't see them, but I sensed that somebody else was there. I didn't bother to look over. They seemed to stay at the far end of the aisle, though, without moving for kind of a long time. I looked over casually. There was a man standing there at the end of the aisle just staring at me. He wasn't like smiling or looking mad or anything. He was just staring at me. We made eye contact for a moment, but I had to look away. This was sort of uncomfortable, and I chose to leave the aisle. I moved to the next one over to get one of the products that I had planned to. After I picked them up, I saw the man enter this aisle. I was a little bit creeped out, and he took a couple of steps closer to me. That's when I looked at him and I asked if I could help him. He said yes, but didn't expand on that any further. I decided to just walk away. I left that aisle and moved out into one of the main ones. Then I began walking to the far back of the store, past the grocery aisles. I heard the man walking after me, and I looked over my shoulder to see him about 20 feet back. This was really weird. I wanted this creep to just leave me alone. After I got to one of the back aisles of the store, I approached the electronics department. That's when I saw one of the employees, and I walked over to them. When I did, the man who had been following me walked into a random aisle. I let the Target employee know that a man had been acting strange and seemingly followed me throughout the store. The employee told me that he would keep an eye out for the man, and if there were any further problems, he would get security. This eased my mind just a little bit. I decided to wrap around the store and go back to where I was originally looking at the products. I had the two that I was buying for sure with me in my hands, but I wanted to look at a couple of other ones still. Eventually, I made it back there, and I didn't encounter the man the entire time that I looked. I was there for maybe 5 more minutes, and decided to get one more thing, and then to check out and leave. They only had a few check lanes that were at the far end of the store by the exit. I walked over, but got about halfway there before noticing the man again. He was standing around by the checkouts, just kind of walking around. He didn't notice me, and I quickly went into an aisle so he wouldn't. I decided to wait there for a few moments and waiting to see if the guy would leave. When I looked back out, he was still there. It was like he was just waiting for me, kind of pacing around by the check lanes. I started to fear the worst, like he would follow me out of the store to my car. In the dark and quiet parking lot, things were much more dangerous than inside the store. I didn't want to go to the checkout or he would see me for sure. I thought about what I could do. There was the option to let the employee know, but I felt like if he just asked the man to leave, the guy would be waiting outside for me in the parking lot, which would be just as bad. I also knew that the Target security guards couldn't really do a whole lot. I decided not to do that and that I would just leave. The things that I was buying could wait, and I didn't need them on this night. I put them back on the shelf. Then, I walked carefully over to the starting area of the checkouts. The man was much further down, because the first several lanes were closed. I very carefully went from behind one aisle to behind one of the closed check lanes, making sure that the man didn't see me. I ducked down behind one and went to the end of that check lane. I very carefully and slowly walked down to the exit. Then, when I was close to the doors, I got up and I left the store without the man noticing. Anybody else who saw me, I'm sure, thought I was acting weird, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get away. Just to be sure, though, I went as fast as I could through the parking lot to my car, and then I drove home. Luckily, I didn't see the man again. After that experience, I haven't been back to that Target. When I go back, I'm hoping nothing else strange happens. This happened a few years ago when I went to Target. I don't really remember what I went to Target to get, but I don't think I got too many items. I know that it was later at night though, and right before they closed. Back then, I believe they closed at 11 p.m., and I went there at probably like 10 or 10:30. I just know that they were closing really soon. I shopped in the quiet store for a while and got a few things. After I checked out and left the store, I went to my car in the parking lot. That's when one of my good friends called me. There are a few good friends that I have that will call any time, and I will call them whenever as well. If it's late at night or early in the morning, it isn't a big deal. So I was talking with them on the phone, and we were having a good conversation. I was very focused on the conversation and did not drive home right away. I was just sitting in the parking lot on my phone talking. The parking lot was obviously almost empty because of the store closing soon. After sitting there in my car for probably 10 minutes or so and talking on the phone, I noticed that a car pulled into the parking space directly next to mine to the left. I noticed it, but didn't really think anything of it. I was fully engaged in the conversation that I was having with my friend. We talked for about another 10 minutes, and then finally, we hung up. I then realized that nobody had gotten out of the car that was parked next to me. I really hadn't even been thinking about it. That's when I thought it was strange that the car had parked next to me in the first place. But now, the driver was still inside of it. I looked over, and to my surprise, the driver was already looking back at me. It was a man with a hat and sunglasses on. He was just staring in my direction from the driver's seat. His car was running as well as mine. I found this really weird, so I decided to back out and go home. As soon as I left the parking space, though, the car that was parked next to me started to back up. I drove my car to leave the parking lot, wondering if the car would follow me. It did, and we both drove to the end of the parking lot, and when I got to the exit, the car suddenly sped up and pulled around me as if it was going to pass. Then it cut in front of me and slammed on its brakes. We both came to a stop, and I was now blocked in, and the car sat there for a few seconds. I honked my horn, wondering what on earth they were doing. Then the front driver's door of the car in front of me opened up quickly. The driver came out and began taking a few steps in my direction. I wasn't going to stay around, and I put my car into reverse. When I backed away, he still walked closer to me. Once I had made it far enough away from him, I put my car back into drive and sped off into another direction. The car, thankfully, did not follow me. I left through a different exit in the parking lot and made it away. I never found out who that guy was. I think he was probably going to try to rob me or something like that. I used to be a Target employee. During my time there, the two main things I did was to be a cashier and a cart attendant. These jobs are pretty self-explanatory. I enjoyed them both for the most part. Being a cashier was fun and I liked to interact with people, but it could get old fast, so going out into the parking lot and bringing in carts was a nice change of pace. The job had other responsibilities too, and I got to know almost all the other employees from around the store. A big store like Target, though, is always hiring new employees. People come and go almost constantly. One day, I was working a longer shift as a cart attendant. At this time, I had already been working there for at least 6 months. I kept up with the carts pretty well for most of the day, and I did a few other things. At one point, I walked inside the store because things were much quieter now. I went to put some of the baskets in the different areas that shoppers could grab them from. It was then that I saw another Target employee approaching me. He was blonde, and I had never seen him before. I wasn't quite sure who he was, but I assumed that he had just recently been hired. He said hi to me, and I said hi back to him. He then told me that my boss was looking for me. I asked where she had gone, and the guy said that they were on break. He then said he was told to tell me to get some paper bags from the back. I said sure, and he said thanks. This was a pretty common task for me that I would do here and there. We had flats in the back area of the store, and we would also keep the paper bags and other basic supplies there as well. I'd walk to the back to get them. The back room was located along the side of the store and ran all the way along the back as well. The area where I usually got the bags from was in the back left corner. When I got over there, I entered the back to see no flats and no bags in the immediate area. I was a little bit confused. It was very quiet, and nobody else seemed to be back there. This was not uncommon though. I also noticed that the doors leading to outside were open. This was also not uncommon because deliveries would be made sometimes. Also, it would get hot in there occasionally, and at night the guys working back there might leave the door open for cool air. I looked around for the flats, but I couldn't find them anywhere in the immediate area. This was also the only location that I would ever get the bags from. I had never gotten them from any place else. Maybe somebody else had gotten them and didn't communicate that. That's what I was thinking, and I was about to go back to work when I heard a noise. It was coming from near the back door. The lighting was never very good back there. I looked over and saw somebody coming out from behind a box. It was not an employee, but just some guy. Then I heard more noise. This noise was from in front of me, and I looked over and I saw someone else coming out from behind another box. There were now 2 men back there with me, none of which worked at Target. Things were really sketchy. The guys didn't say anything, and they started walking over to me at a fast speed. I asked what was going on, but got no answer. I decided to turn around and run. I ran for the open door, which was in the opposite direction. The men chased after me, and I had probably 25 feet on them to begin with. When I made it to the door, I ran out. I happened to notice a pickup truck that was just kind of randomly parked out there. Somebody was in the driver's seat, and the door opened as I approached. I ran to the side, avoiding it, and then into a random grassy area behind the store. It was an area that I had never been in before. I knew that I needed to get back around to the front, and I sprinted as fast as I could. I heard some men shouting at me, but I no longer heard them chasing after. Still, I didn't stop running, and I sprinted all the way back around to the front. I re-entered the store and finally could catch my breath. After calming down a little, I searched all throughout the store for the employee who had told me to go back there. I couldn't find him though, and he was seemingly gone. My boss was in fact on her break, and eventually I found one of the security guards that we had. I told him everything about what had happened, and the police ended up being called. It was no surprise that the guy who had told me to go back there wasn't actually an employee. This was confirmed to me later that night. It had all been some kind of a setup. An investigation was done, but I'm not aware that they ever found the men.
I worked at Target years ago. I mostly worked in the furniture and home decor department of the store. That area was towards the middle and the back, and I worked pretty random hours because I was part-time. One Friday afternoon, it was probably about 2 p.m. or so. I worked until 6, and to that point, things had gone pretty smooth and the store was not too busy. I was walking past the electronics section when a man approached me. I turned around to see a tall man with a winter hat on, and he asked me why there were no iPads left. Immediately, I didn't like his tone. He seemed angry and came off as rude. I told the man I wasn't sure because I didn't work in electronics, but I could check to see if we had any available in the store. The man told me that it said online we had one, but when he went to look, there were none. He then said that the electronics guy was no help to him. I looked up right there if we had any iPads in stock, and we didn't have any. I showed this to the man and apologized to him, saying that we didn't have any in stock at this location, but I could check if they had any at nearby Target stores. The man was not satisfied by this. He said to me that he had just looked online, and it said we had one in stock here, and then he asked me if I was calling him a liar. I tried to calm the man down and said maybe somebody had just purchased our last one. He kept asking me to get one from the back after that, as if we had a bunch of iPads in the back room. Basically, the man was becoming more and more angry no matter what I said. He started to say that I was lying, and that we must have a bunch of idiots working here. This is when I told the man that he would just have to leave the store because we couldn't have him talking like that. At first, he refused, but after a few seconds, the man finally just turned around and walked in the other direction. I was so glad that he was finally leaving, and I went back to doing what I originally was. I made my way a few aisles over and was organizing one of the shelves of home decorations. Probably 10 minutes later, I saw the man again. He entered the aisle that I was working in, and he just stood there looking at me. It was as if he was just waiting for me to say something. I really didn't want to, and I ignored him for the first few seconds after noticing him, but finally I turned to him and asked what he wanted. He was still angry. He started walking over to me, basically saying the same things that he had before. I didn't want to be a part of this any longer, and I said that he needed to leave the store or I would call security. That seemed to stop him because I left the aisle and the man stayed there. I walked over and went into the back room area of the store. As I walked through the main walkway in the back, I heard the door open and shut to the store behind me. I looked back a ways and saw the guy had entered the back room as well and was now following me. I kept walking and hoped to see somebody else who was working back there, but I didn't. The guy was walking behind me and seemed to be getting closer. I turned around for a brief second and told him that he wasn't allowed to be back here. He didn't say anything and kept walking quickly in my direction. I took my walkie from my side and called for security and gave them the location of where I was going. The guy got closer and closer. Pretty soon, he was only a few feet behind me. I had almost made it to the door. When I finally made it to another door that went back into the store, the guy reached out and grabbed my arm. At around the same time, I opened the doors and went out. When I did, that's where security was. They were able to get the man to leave, and I went back to my department. It was crazy why the guy kept following me. and I'm not really sure what his problem was. This is a story of something that happened when I was shopping at Target a couple of months ago. I was at a super Target, which is a bigger version of a regular Target, and I was shopping at one not too far from my house. It was probably like 8 o'clock at night or so, and I was shopping for mainly toothpaste and soap, which I had run out of. There was a back wall where most of those type of products were, and when I was in that area, I was looking around and happened to glance behind me. The store was pretty quiet, and not many other people were shopping at all. But there was another aisle nearby that had like makeup and skin products, and in that aisle was just one guy. He was wearing a hat and had an old-looking backpack with him, which is what I immediately noticed. But then, I saw the guy take something off the shelf and just stick it into his backpack. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The guy had to know that I could see him, or at least that I was there. I kept watching, and the guy pulled about 4 or 5 more things right off the shelf and put them into his backpack. To be honest, it was making me mad, and I even took a couple of steps closer to the guy. This didn't stop him. He didn't even seem to notice me. He pulled a couple of more things off the shelf and stole them as well. That's when I decided to talk to him. I entered the aisle and said that he shouldn't put things in his backpack. He looked at me. He didn't look surprised, and he didn't try to hide it either. He just told me that I should mind my own business and leave him alone. I told him that there were cameras everywhere, and Target probably saw everything that he did. The guy just told me to shut up and then walked angrily away. I went back and found a Target employee and let them know about him. After that, I went back to my shopping. The rest of it only took me about 5 or 10 more minutes, and I didn't really have that much stuff to get. I didn't see the guy at all the rest of the time that I was in the store. I kind of assumed that Target had known what he was doing and was either talking to him or the police were called. Either way, I knew I did what I could to help out. I checked out and left the store. I got into my car and began to drive off. Right when I was leaving the parking lot, that's when I saw an older, beat-up looking small black car come speeding out of nowhere through the lot. At this Target, the parking lot was pretty big, and there were other businesses that were in the same shopping area with their properties connected. The car appeared to come out of one of these parking lots and drove straight towards my car. I had to slam on my brakes and swerve a little bit to avoid making contact with him. Then the car slammed on its brakes as well, just before we nearly collided. My car was basically blocked between the curb and the other car. That's when I looked up, wondering what idiot had just nearly ran into me. Then I saw the driver, and it was the same man who had been shoplifting inside of Target. He was now looking at me through the front windshield of his car, no doubt mad at me for getting involved in his shoplifting experience. He flipped me the bird as we both sat there. I wanted to drive away, but his car was only about 2 feet away from mine, and behind me was the curb. Both of our cars sat there for probably 30 seconds. It was really uncomfortable with the guy staring right into my window the entire time. Then the man opened up his driver's door and began walking over to my car. I knew that I didn't have a choice anymore. I put my car into reverse and slammed my foot on the pedal. I did not have 4-wheel drive, but my car somehow hopped up onto the curb, and when I had enough space, I put it back into drive. Then I turned and drove away from the guy. I saw him running back to his car, but I was already speeding away and out of the parking lot. I made it back onto the street, and somehow I wasn't followed. I'm not sure if the guy got away with shoplifting those items or what, but he was already outside and waiting for me when I left. Hopefully I never see him again. Last year, I was invited to a little birthday party that my friend Taylor was having. It was just a few people in my friend group that were going. I had no idea what to get at all, and I went to Target after work one day to find something. I'm always really bad at figuring out what to get people. I don't know why, but I've just always been that way. So when I got to Target, I just started looking around at things that could be general good gifts. It was like 9 p.m., pretty late, so the store was almost empty. I'm not really sure how long I was there, but it was probably a while. I did get a couple of things that I actually needed as well, and I got a little distracted by some other items that I looked at. I somehow ended up in one of the aisles in the back corner of the store. I was just looking around, trying to find a good gift, and that's when I started to hear noises. It was just like random noises, like there was somebody nearby. I assumed it was another customer or an employee, but I hadn't really seen anybody in the area, and the noises would have still been strange. It was like a tapping or random thuds. It went on in what sounded like the next aisle over for a few minutes straight. I got curious and I walked over to that aisle to see where the noises were coming from. When I got to it, I saw that nobody was there. I even walked over to the next aisle after that as well, but nobody was there either. This was really strange. I decided to go over and get back to my shopping, but when I passed by the first aisle that I had looked at, I saw behind a suitcase there was a man. The guy was crouched behind one of the suitcases, and I looked at him for several seconds from about 30 feet away probably. At first, he wasn't looking at me, but eventually he turned his head and we made eye contact. When he was looking at me, he was completely expressionless. It was really strange. I decided to just leave the guy alone. I walked over to a completely different side of the store and kept looking. When I was in that aisle over there, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. When I looked, I saw the same guy was peeking around the corner. He was just looking at me still. I left the aisle through the other side. I wrapped up my shopping then because this guy was really creeping me out. I ended up just getting Taylor a gift card. I know I'm lame, but when I was at the checkouts buying the items, I saw the guy again. This time, he was standing right by the exit doors. I ended up just getting Taylor a gift card. I know, I'm lame. But when I got to the checkouts and I was buying my items, I saw the guy again. This time, he was standing right by the exit doors. He wasn't leaving. He was just standing there on the side. He also wasn't looking directly at me, but in the area of the check lane that I was at. When I was done checking out, I decided to leave in the other exit doors instead. Luckily, this Target had 2 of them. I really didn't want to walk by that weirdo again. By the time I made it to the other doors and started to walk outside, he was already there. The guy was standing outside, just looking at me. I tried to walk past him and not look at him because I was afraid if I did, he would do something creepy. As I walked past, I was nervous that he would follow me, and sure enough, he did. He started to walk behind me as I went to my car. When I sped up, he did as well. Eventually, I started sprinting. Then the guy was sprinting too. I unlocked my car, got inside, and sped away as fast as I could. Luckily for me, the guy stopped before my car. I'm really not sure what he was doing or who he was. Maybe it was a dumb joke. Either way, it really creeped me out. From the time I was a junior in high school until my freshman year of college, I used to work at Target. My job that I had was a cart attendant, which means I would walk around the parking lot and bring carts back into the store. I did some other stuff too, but that was basically it. It was a busy Target that I worked at with 2 entrances, so I would always be busy, especially on weekends. On one night, it was a weekday, and it had gotten pretty quiet. I was working a closing shift, which went until 10 p.m., and typically the last hour and a half or so would be really quiet. I was inside doing a restroom check, which was another one of my responsibilities, and then I refilled some of the shopping baskets inside the store. When I was done with those things, it was just about 10, so I went back out to the parking lot for one last time to collect all the remaining carts and bring them in. There really weren't many at all, maybe 10 total carts, but they were spread out across the entire parking lot that we had. I went out and got them all, and as I was in the far back corner of the parking lot, I noticed there was one last cart in the way back. It was literally the very far back corner, and it was pretty far away from the store. I started to walk over to it, and noticed that there was one car parked close by. The parking lot was almost completely empty, besides the 20 or so cars that belonged to employees that were all parked in the back middle. This one was farther away, and I didn't think anything of this particular car until I realized that there seemed to be somebody in the driver's seat. I saw this as I was getting closer. The car was a sort of dark SUV that was relatively big, but I'm not much of a car expert, so beyond that I'm not sure. I had to walk right in front of the car to get the cart, and as I passed by the front of the car, I saw the lights suddenly turn on. I was a little spooked at first by this, but then I just got the cart and started walking back. I glanced over to the car and noticed that the driver was staring at me with a really angry look on his face. I thought this was pretty awkward, and I walked pretty quickly back to the store and put the carts away. I don't know why the guy would be mad at me, but from there, I clocked out of work, then left the store and walked to my car. I always pretty much parked in the same spot in the back middle of the parking lot. When I was approaching my car though, I now noticed that the car that I had just seen a few minutes earlier was parked directly next to me. This was sort of strange, and I did my best to ignore it and got inside my car. I then started it up and left as quickly as I could, because I didn't want another awkward moment with the guy. But as soon as I did, the car left as well. It didn't take long for me to realize that I was being followed by this guy. Every turn that I made, the car behind me would make as well. As I got close to home and had to take the exit from the highway, the car did the same. I didn't want to go straight home, so instead of turning on my street, I kept going, and then I went into another residential neighborhood and I planned to just drive around. I wasn't really sure what to do and I was getting nervous. I started just driving down random streets and then turning onto the next one and going down that. I was basically just going down every street, and the car followed me through about 4 streets, I would say. As I kept going, it randomly pulled out and sped past me. I heard the engine of the car make a loud roar as it did. After that, they drove away, and when I was sure I couldn't see them anymore, I turned around and went back towards my house. I got home, and then everything was fine. I've always wondered after that, though, why the person followed me and who it was. I also wonder how they knew which car was mine, and why they parked next to my car.